embarrassing to have
Okay,
my mom pop in.
I know. I think it'll everybody loves seeing like, the mom or the kids
Yeah.
or whatever show up. Like my son is at he's at the beach right now, but like
Oh,
normally he
nice.
likes to like come up the stairs right here and
Yeah.
like zoom
How old is
bomb, which
he?
is he's 3. And so
No.
at the beginning of the pandemic, we were uh, potty training him, which meant he was running around without pants on a lot,
Hmm.
which makes for extremely compelling Zoom bomb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like little like half naked toddler like running
Just in the
through. We
background.
have some yeah, I have a series on of like LinkedIn posts right now on my junior S&B rep, and the performance plans he's on, and
Yeah.
the HR violations and what have you. All
And
right,
that's
so
one of
we'll
them.
yeah, no kidding. Yeah, he's not quite hip with the dress code just yet. Hey everyone, we're gonna wait for some other folks to kind of like trickle in here, and then we'll get started. Jen and I were joking about the delightfulness of domestic zoomness. Her
Yes.
her mom may come photo Zoom bomb us here in a second.
Yeah, I was thinking I might need my AirPods and I was gonna yell down, "Mom, my AirPods!" and see if she came up, but she did not comply.
Mom, meatloaf, AirPods. And folks, go ahead and just like put your questions put your questions in the chat here as you're joining. So we'll be able to dig in here in a second here. All right. So how did the company-wide call turn out? Did mom
Hey, Mom.
join? Did she
Uh,
whiteboard?
no, she just pops out in the background and looks. It's like she's so curious. I'm like, it'd be really great if you could give me a little privacy. But I am in her home, so
Yeah.
I think I have to respect Mom's rules.
I do quarterly dinners with my account executives,
Nice.
one on one, and I was doing one the other day, and his mom came into his room, and he and to bring him a homemade salad that she had
Nice.
made for him. I know
Yeah,
it was super
not
nice.
bad.
But then we got to share with her the crap we had given him because of essentially he got kicked out of his house because he attended a socially distant um, picnic, which then in retrospect had a coronavirus case at it, and his
Perfect.
parents are like, "Cool, you're getting an
I
Airbnb, bro."
That makes sense.
And so it was
What a
funny.
time, what a time to be an adult living with your parents. It's like completely acceptable now.
Oh yeah,
Like if
yeah.
you're dating right now and you're like, "Oh, I live with my parents," like it's no longer anything that anyone can be mad about. There's your COVID silver lining.
Yeah, there it is. Exactly. Mom, meatloaf and AirPods. All right, cool, folks. We're going to get started here. It looks like we have a bunch of great folks joining us. I see a lot of familiar names here, which is absolutely delightful. So just want to go ahead and welcome everybody to probably, I think, the 10th, 11th sales strategy office hours. Um, so just as a little bit of a intro for folks who haven't been here before, sales strategy office hours live Q&A with illustrious guests like Jen here and myself. I'm Pete Kazanji. We'll get into introductions here in a little bit, but this is essentially something that I found myself doing pretty frequently with sales leaders and founders and what have you, where they wanted to dig into this problem or that problem that's kind of vexing them with respect to their go-to-market, whether it's sales strategy or sales operations or what have you. Mom, meatloaf,
Mom, AirPod.
um, AirPods, mom, and so one of the things we kind of realized is like, well, maybe we could just do this like publicly, right? And that way, a bunch of people who maybe have the same problems could hear similar answers that solve their problems. So office hours was born. People really love it. We're joined today by Jen Igartua. Did I get it?
Igartua. It's a hard one.
Igart. Oh, it's the U is like Igartua.
IGA, yeah. Gartua.
IGA. Who I'm going to let introduce herself here, Jen.
Cool. Sweet. So my name is Jenny Igartua. I'm the CSO of Go Nimbly. We're a revenue operations company. And so really the insight that I bring here, like the things that I'm really obsessed with that I'll be able to answer good questions about. I started my career as a technologist, got really into kind of the Eloqua, Marketo, Pardot game. Obviously in the Salesforce space, I worked at Blue Wolf. And the unique thing that I started getting really obsessed with is sales and marketing alignment and seeing two teams that should have a similar North Star and should be aligned have the most conflict. And that's how Go Nimbly started to be born. I joined Go Nimbly with Jason Reichel and Troy Conker. They have kind of a depth in sales and customer success. I brought a lot of marketing ops, and we called it unifying the business stack. Before revenue operations was sort of a term, and that's how we've sort of built that insight and IP. And other things that kind of go outside of sales, marketing, customer success, operations, and that insight is I really care about focus at work and what your relationship with work is. And so I think that's really helped me with managing remote teams. So
Mm.
that's been kind of like something that I've been obsessed with over the last few years is how work is changing and how to do that. And then on the side, I do fun things like improv, and I make card games, and I'm from Spain and I like tapas.
Delicious. Making me hungry. Wonderful. Well, super stoked to have you. Jen is obviously a really big contributor to the Modern Sales Forum. She's pretty busy, so she's not the most frequent poster, but when she's got like a meaty question, she'll rip off like a huge like post, and it'll be epic quality. For folks who haven't met me before, my name is Pete Kazanji. I'm the founder of Modern Sales. Modern Sales is the nation's largest sales operations leadership and enablement peer education community. I'm sure a lot of the folks who are here today are probably members of Modern Sales. If you're not, you can check it out at modernsaleshq.com. Also run a software company called Atrium that makes sales performance analysis software that does the analysis for you, which is pretty whizzy stuff. And the way that I got into sales is my background is in product management and product marketing. And in my last software company that I started, Talent Bin, I went from being just a founder to the first rep, first sales manager, sales leader. Eventually, we were acquired by Monster Worldwide, and so went from being kind of like I don't know what's going on here, and kind of like derived my way to process excellent, analytically excellent sales leadership. Wrote a book on it too. It's called Founding Sales. That's essentially the handbook for early stage go to market. So that's me. All right, so everybody's all introduced, which is delightful. So we're going to go ahead and start getting into questions here. If you have questions, go ahead and dump them into the chat here. I think one of the first questions that we had, which I thought was great, is from Zach here. Let me go ahead and find Zach because it was on the topic of remote engagement.
Cool.
Zach, we're going to pluck you out of the ether and bring you into the panel here. There he is. Wonderful.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
Hey, there he
Hi.
is. Hello, Zach.
How are you
Zach,
doing?
can you go ahead? Yeah, tell us where you work and the kind of just like parameters of the sales motion at your organization, and we can get into your
Sure
question.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I work at Yelp, and
Oh, wonderful.
we have a very large sales team
Yeah.
for our local sales, and there's probably like 3 layers of management. Like the locus control has to be like
Yeah.
very, very reduced. So there's a lot of people in play in this group, and they all have, I think, really unique challenges um, as far as communication, collaboration. This is a very the camaraderie remains high because it is a very much a dialing for dollars sort of
Sure.
setup. So that kind of psychology has been somewhat well, almost altogether reduced.
Yeah.
And we also, as you probably read, went through some furloughs. So now people are coming back,
Mm,
and we're getting back to full strength. So we're just kind of focusing on that at first, and now we need to promote how do we get these teams
mm,
to work very effectively, keep the
Yep.
camaraderie high. You know, a lot of people are, when they're in a same space, they're able to feed off each other's energy and get
Sure.
coached, live coaching, you know. And these are kind of the things we're trying to now bring into a virtual environment.
Yeah.
And trying to just get ideas about what's worked out there for teams that are you know, high volume,
Right.
sort of teams that are really, you know, big part of the job, the enjoyment of their job comes from the interaction with their
Yes.
peers.
Salespeople are extroverts, so they feed off
Yeah.
the. Jen, you have a pretty big distributed team right now. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
So I actually have a couple questions before I come up with ideas that
Yeah.
you've probably already
Sure.
had. What have you done? Like, are you doing a lot of blitzes or events and happy hours? Like, what kind of things have you already sort of like ticked off and said, I've given those a try?
I can't say for sure. So again, we have, I'd have to say, close to 70 sales managers, frontline managers. So
Yep.
They're
our
doing their own thing.
presence,
Okay.
right, our presence, we don't really have a per se sales operations team, even though
Mhm.
I've been sales operations in all my previous jobs. So I mean, this is a very juicy nut for me to crack and want to explore more into.
Sure.
But
Yep.
really want to understand what's worked for people that have, yeah, gone
Well,
in
I'll give you
that virtual.
some categories. So I think there's, one piece which is just social, right? Like being able to
Mhm.
see individuals, sort of kind of a mental health thing that you want to give that access to people. And a lot of individuals are doing, or a lot of companies are doing happy hours. And at the
Yep.
beginning, it starts to be fun, and then people kind of dwindle off, and the novelty goes away. And
Right.
so we've just gotten creative. So I make games. So this is like kind of fun for me to come up with like different ideas, and I know it's not
Hmm.
everybody's skill, but so for example, we did a happy hour recently where we did TED Talks, and everybody came and you all created a PowerPoint for another person, and then that person had to present it. And so it was like kind of fun and engaging, and seeing people have a different side than you typically have at work, but still
Yep.
giving it structure, right? We've done
Yep.
having somebody teach how to make cocktails, etc. So there's a
Hmm.
lot you can do where it's a little more structured. Otherwise, you get the extroverts who, like me, take over a conversation, and it becomes less about your people. And so, giving that, there's, a few applications. I forget what one's called. So I'm sure someone that works with me will tell me. I think it's like Online Town or something like that, where you can go on and you kind of move around the screen, and you can go to different groups and chat so that you don't have 50 people on one Zoom.
Right.
So that's kind of the social piece. You can get really creative. Then there's, what can you do so that people get to work together more? And so it's like, collaboration and working together, so you don't feel like you're, smiling and dialing at home by yourself all day.
Right.
And, we've done that in a few ways. The issue that you have is you're such high velocity and you're on the phone a lot. So there's not a ton of collaboration that you're doing. And so
Right.
you guys we do cave days, which is you do sprints of work and you do breaks within them. So a typical person can focus from 25 to 50 minutes on the
Hmm.
same work. Before it just becomes, you need a break. And so we do these like 2.5 hour chunks of time. We put it on the calendar. Everyone shows up on a Zoom, and then we do exercises in between. And I usually manage it, and then you do a 25-minute sprint by yourself. You mute. People typically keep their cameras on. Some people decide to turn them off if they're a little conscious of everybody staring at them. Then you do your work. So maybe you would do 25 minutes of dialing, and then you come back in. Maybe there's a social check-in. Did you have a win? What happened? Or sometimes we do just like a fun thing, like everybody go around and what's your favorite vacation. So it gives like a little bit of like structure and focus, and then a little break. And again, sometimes we do stretches. Like, it doesn't have to be anything over the top. We call them cave days, and it's been pretty fun. So, and then there's Slack, right? So we were doing daily check-ins. Hey, everybody, post your first car. Hey, everybody, post XYZ. So, it's the thing that I really care about is making things repeatable and like
Yep.
manageable. Like, cave days are really manageable because I'm getting work done. It's not taken away
Yep.
from like all the work I have to do. So that's just one idea.
Yeah. So I think one thing I'll tell you I'll take the kind of the other side of the coin, which is maybe more kind of like operational rigor and kind of like brass tacks of management. I think that what you end up kind of seeing in when organizations kind of distribute, and what ends up happening is the things that previously were organic happening organically now have to be explicit. It's like a good example of this is like you may have had implicit operating rhythms happening on the part of your managers or what have you. Like maybe on this team, like this is how we do our stand-ups or XYZ, or we look at these metrics on like at this time, this team over here. Really, you like that organicness has to become text. It has to become explicit. I dropped a deck in the chat on managing work from home sales teams. So I think an important component of this is understanding like what is your actual operating rhythm and like what are those meetings. So when we moved to work from home, we started doing, previously we didn't do daily stand-ups. I'm a really big fan of daily stand-ups, but when people are coming to the office at different times, it becomes kind of challenging. Like, you know, somebody shows up at 8:30 or 9:30 or 10:30 or whatever. Whereas now you're virtual, so you can say like, great, you know what? There's a 15-minute recurring stand-up on the calendar every morning, and that just gets done via, you know, Slack video, etc. Very quick, starts the day off, and then you know, just make sure that that's happening throughout the rest of your operating rhythm as well. Like, what is the agenda? What gets covered in your sales team agenda, right? Do you have like a conclusion of the week agenda in order to make sure that like, you know, consistency is happening? So then the thing that this mixes well with is metrics and analytics and understanding, like instrumenting the quantity and quality of selling behavior that's going on. Because especially in a high like dialing environment, oftentimes people will just kind of like, oh, is it loud in here? Right? Like that's how they'll be paying attention to that. And like obviously that can't happen right now. So using this as an opportunity to get rigorous around those metrics, and then also driving kind of the consumption of them, because oftentimes what people will do is they're like, yeah, we have dashboards that nobody looks at. Yay, right? We're data driven, right? Whereas now, like obviously you have to look at these things on a recurring basis, which then this is why it mixes well with the operating rhythm, because like a meeting is for distributing information, reviewing things together, and like driving correction. And so like those two things mix together. The other thing I was going to note, I had a rep who was really struggling when he went to work from home because he's very extroverted and feeds off of other people, and also he's a little distractible. And so Jen was talking about cave days, I guess you called them. Another thing that they can be helpful if you do see like in the metrics that individuals are kind of like tailing off with respect to their activity levels or what have you, is getting them on like a Pomodoro schedule, where you can do is exactly what Jen was talking about earlier, like 25 minutes on, I forget what it is exactly, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off as a break. You do whatever it is, like 4 of those, then you take a larger break. So we actually got him a Pomodoro like timer, so he could actually like use that for himself. So I think it's just that's another thing that you can do there as well.
I want to plus one of the frameworks that you use, because I think it's not just for this, but in general, you know, this idea of going from culture to systems. And when you look at any problem, you're leaning on one or the other. And so that's kind of one of the things that we do a lot in our consulting, is try to identify like, okay, is this a process strong enough and is the culture strong enough to just keep it up? Or do we need to bring it into a system that somebody has to follow, and how rigid? And one of the components of a system is applied design. How much of it is able to have wiggle room? How much of it is up to the user? So it's, you know, it's something that we can send out afterwards, because I've got a bunch of content around this. But culture versus systems is like one of the big things that we think a lot about right now, because we leaned on culture a lot and identifying those things that can no longer happen without an office.
Yeah, wonderful. Cool. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you,
guys. Good luck.
Thank
See
you.
ya. All right, delightful. I think we got another fun one here. Let me find Letitia. Promote to panelists.
And we got a web-based Pomodoro that Imran posted.
Oh, there we go.
A little app that everyone can use.
Delightful. Hey, what's shaking, Letitia? How you doing?
I'm great, and how are you guys?
Hanging in there, hanging in there. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself? You know, where you work, what you do there, and we can get into your question here. Okay.
Thank you. So I'm Tish. I work for a promotional products company called Promos Promotional Products. and I am the Senior Director of Sales Operations.
Delightful.
Can you say your company name again? You broke up.
Sure, it's ePromos Promotional Products.
Cool. All right. So you're working, and so you do sales operations there. Is this kind of like is this a B2C? Or no, actually, like what sort of sales motion is like low ASP, mid, high?
Mid.
Okay. Delightful. And so what is your question?
So my question has to do with regards to the departments, operations, which is everyone else like accounting, supports, creative services versus sales.
Okay.
We have a great organization, a great culture, but I feel like we often get stuck because we're battling each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
The folks who are selling, who are typically, like you said, very big extroverts, very demanding, wants a lot of requests in order for them, continuously supporting them and trying to give. And there's always a struggle. And I'm trying to figure out any tips or tricks of how, we can work better together, less in a silo and against each other, and create more of that revenue-driven business working together.
Okay.
It's
Keller.
like it's almost as if I placed you here. I promise I did not ask Letitia to ask this question. This is
Sure.
I promise. I don't know Letitia. We're best friends now, but I didn't know her prior to this. So it's kind of our bread and butter is how to break down these silos at companies. So I'll tell you a couple things about silo syndrome. There's 4 reasons why it's happening to you. There is a high number of employee growth, so lots of new people coming in. There's lots of departments either creating new of them or you kind of happen to have them. A lot of specialty, so individuals that have like a deep specialty in something, and a lot of differing metrics by team. All those 4 things are gonna work against creating a company without silos because you're protecting your own thing. And so you've got departments that are protecting their number, their technology, their processes, their team. And that's really what ends up creating, kind of these silos. And the worst ones is are you going into a meeting and you've already got like a pit in your stomach, or a counterpart says it and your chest is hurting. That's when it's really starting to get to a place where you're no longer collaborating, you're not on the same team. So if that's happening, there's a lot of things that you can do. The way you're defining operations to me, when you started talking about accounting, etc., there's revenue operations, which is sales, marketing, customer success. I think of them as the directors, and your go-to-market team as your actors. They should be one revenue team together. And then you've got biz ops, which also plays a role, right? And there's, some rev ops teams include finance operations and a few other things that can get a little bit, murky, but that's sort of the way that I think of an org. And what are ways you can break down, to get tactical? So you've identified you've got this. What are some things that you can do? One that we always promote is action meetings. We can also send some content around this because there's a really great Medium blog article that you can also Google. But action meetings are all about keeping momentum and getting through a lot of items very quickly, which gives a lot of people the space to bring them up. And it also allows everybody to hear about everybody else's kind of problems and brings a lot more kind of empathy and alignment. The second one is aligning metrics, right? So we talked about creating metrics that kind of really create collaboration. So there's probably looking at, what metrics each team is being given. The third one is a roadmap, more communication, really. Thinking about, do teams know what the other people are working on? Are you prioritizing together? What's that, process look like? Because not knowing what your counterpart was doing is one big reason why you start kind of getting angry. And then, to build trust with the sales team, you're getting a lot of requests from your sales team, which are intuition based. So they're annoyed about something. This isn't working. I want this feature. I heard about this cool thing. And the problem with that is that it's not customer based and it's not metrics based. And so you have to sort of, balance those 2 things out and try to prioritize things that are true gaps and enable your team on identifying those. And that can be really hard. Do we sometimes prioritize work that the sales team needs because they're, angry and upset
Loud.
and we need to do it? Yes.
Right.
Do we hope that it aligns with our true gaps? Absolutely. So I don't know. I said a lot, but I'm hoping there's a bit of tactical and a bit of strategic in there to kind of get you going.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
thank
some
you.
so some things to add there. I think one thing that Jen was noting was make sure that you have like alignment on metrics and things like that. Again, another thing is to just be very explicit about like definitions, right, and rules of engagement. Like oftentimes, this is kind of related to what we were talking about in the previous question, like culture versus systems based. So one of the things, like, oh yeah, we've always kind of done it that way. Oh yeah, what was it ever documented and agreed upon? No, it's just kind of like, it's in the air, it's in the water. So I think that like the crisper you can kind of get her, and my background is in product marketing, so I just like, create documentation and slides and what have you. So I think the more explicit you can kind of get about these things, the better off you'll be. And that doesn't mean you have to do like a huge lift. We're like, oh, we're going to document all of our processes or like document all of our definitions, but more you can kind of do it piecemeal. So like one of the things that I talk with about my reps and other folks is, if you get an objection more than twice, make a slide, right? If you have an issue, if you have an issue more than once where you have essentially have like this going on, or like, oh, I thought it was this and I thought it was this, create an actual like definition associated with that. Like, oh, this op is not qualified. Oh, okay, well, why is that? Well, I guess we actually don't have a definition of like what minimum qualification criteria is. Oh, okay. Well, that seems like that would kind of be super problematic. All right, well, maybe we should actually define that and like throw it in a guru card or something, and then that way we won't have this drama anymore. So I think like getting into like getting into documentation as much as possible, and doing that in a like a creative way over time can really be helpful there. The other thing that can be helpful too is, and this is less about alignment and this is like more about not being beholden to. So one of the things that I ran into at my last software company, so Talentpin was acquired by Monster. And so the sales operations function at Monster was very old school. It's like old school sales operations where essentially it was just like, comp, CRM, administration, et cetera, not like strategy. So the metaphor I use for that is more like the tail getting wagged as opposed to like the dog doing the wagging, right? Um, and what one of the things, and that's actually kind of creates lots of problems because if you report up into the person who potentially like signs your paycheck, it oftentimes is a lot more challenging to be able to say like, actually, it turns out that we're creating a bunch of bullshit pipe right here that doesn't meet ICP characteristics, for instance. If you can get sales operations out of like being beholden to sales, that's another way you could do it. And so actually this is where I suppose like revenue operations oftentimes comes in. It's like you just bust that thing out of sales. Kind of two things. One, you can deliver operational excellence across other things outside of sales. So like, CS and marketing as well. The other thing too is you cease to be beholden to this thing that maybe you're supposed to be the referee on sometimes. So those are some other things you can consider too. Jen,
One
did you have
last
something
thing,
you want to
yeah,
add?
that this made me think of. One nice thing to get closer to the sales team if you are feeling like a little bit of that push and pull is do rep rides. It's a good thing that every operator should be doing anyway. You wouldn't really trust a product team that doesn't talk to their customer. You're not going to trust an ops team that doesn't talk to their go-to-market team and your actors, if I can use that metaphor again. So sit
Right.
down with your reps, watch them, do their workflow, interview them, ask
Yep.
questions. What you're going to do is that's a proactive way of identifying gaps, and you're going to hear them, and I'm sure there's going to be one that you're going to be really aligned on. But it gives them kind of not just a voice, which helps, but it's actually an activity you should be doing anyway.
Yep. Cool. Thanks, Tisha. Appreciate you joining us. Have a great weekend. Okay.
Thank you.
See ya. All right. Delightful. I think I have a really fun one here
Ooh.
from Danielle. Let's go ahead, and it's very tactical. Danielle, we're going to promote you to a panelist here. And let's see if you're able. Hey, there she is. Hello.
Hey
Good to see you,
there.
Danielle.
Nice to meet you, Bill.
Hello. Likewise. Wonderful earrings. So can
Okay.
you introduce yourself and your company, and we can get into your question?
Sure. I'm Danielle. I'm the Chief of Staff at Motion Hall. We have a life science partnering platform. And we sell to, so as the chief of staff, revenue operations falls under me, especially the sales operations work. So we sell to some pretty old school industries, and it's really common for people to have a deck before they meet. So they're often looking at partnering their drugs. That's where our software fits, helping them find partners for that. And so we find that often our leads want to see a capabilities deck, and they'll won't get on a qualification call with us without a deck. But we also find if we send them a deck, they assume we're something we're not, and then won't meet with us. And we're not sure what to do. We've been trying both. Like, we've sent a basic deck that's basically our website in a PDF. Because I'm like, well, everything you would read about us is on our website at this link, and they don't like that. They and sometimes they'll have a qualification call. It'll be great. They want to move forward, but they want a deck before they get on the demo. And the demo is the deck. Like, but we want to talk through it because it's a new solution that no one else is offering. Anyways, that's a long way to say we don't want to give them a deck, and they want a deck. And when they get a deck, it kills the sale. And so we're not sure what to do.
Things go sideways. Got it. Fun conundrum.
Yeah.
Oof, this is like not an industry I play in. We work primarily with SaaS companies that, definitely don't have this kind of problem.
Different.
So I don't know if Pete, you've got something right off the bat, and I'll brainstorm. I don't want to like shoot from the hip when I'm just here problem solving without much depth.
Yeah. Well, so here, let me just go ahead and drop into the chat room here. This is a chapter from Founding Sales on product marketing, and then this one right here is the chapter on sales materials. And so I think the answer to your question is that, like, I mean, it's oftentimes very hard to buck how an industry buys.
Yeah.
Right. And that's also true with respect to like pricing as well. So what my recommendation would be is to think about how you can like meet their requirements in a minimally viable way, but in a way, and I'm with you, you don't want to have the situation where that like kills the sale potentially. And so I think the way to do that is to have like a minimally viable version of your marketing collateral, which like very, very explicitly calls out like, and don't get it twisted. And I know what you're thinking, right? I know you're thinking, you think we're this, we are not this, right? Like being very explicit about that. So I think that essentially like it's pre-handling objections, right? Which is kind of a critical thing from a seller standpoint, to be able to pre-handle objections. From a talk track standpoint, essentially what you're doing is you're doing in collateral. So that's one thing that I think you could do there. I think the other thing too is that there has to be value for somebody to get on a call with you, because like people are busy. So like in Atrium's case, so we make sales performance analysis software. Cool. We also have like our reps and myself also happen to be pretty great experts at sales performance analysis and like management by metric and so on and so forth. So, getting on a discovery call with one of my reps is actually like an extremely valuable use of time, because they talk management, they talk about like things that can be done even short of adopting Atrium. The other thing that we do too is we actually do pretty cool incentivized disco conversations where like, I don't know if I have one right here. Like we'll send people like a book, right? Like a sales management book as an inducement to, get on a call. And then all along the way, there's always value on the other side of the gate. So usually the way that our sales process works, we have an initial discovery conversation, figure out where an organization is at, how like metrically excellent they are, or most of the time not metrically excellent. And then usually the next step is like, oh, do you want to turn on your data so you can actually see what's going on with that, the lack of prospecting that you actually perceive in your enterprise reps? And they're like, oh, well, it only takes 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm really into that. So, and then that's like the demo is on their day. So I think what you would do is like, architect your sales process so there's always a carrot at the incremental gates, and that can be a really helpful way of kind of surmounting that. So yeah, so I think in summary, it's like, you know, architect the collateral in order to handle their case, or at least like minimally viably check their box, but don't let them get it twisted, and think about like, what is the carrot, like what is the inducement and the value of getting on a synchronous conversation with you.
Great, that's helpful.
Jen, did you have stuff that you wanted to add there?
Just random ideas that may or may not work for your industry, but I mean, my mind goes immediately to like other assets. Like, is there a way to do this, like a video walkthrough of a deck, or is there a way to implement drift into your deck so you don't give them a PDF, but you give it to them and you have a bot that's saying, do you have questions about X, and it's more interactive. So, you know, can we think of other avenues to give that information that they must have, while, you know, making sure that they see it in a certain way. And then, yeah, it sounds to me like a lot of copywriting. Like, if they're misunderstanding your value prop, or they're misunderstanding your capabilities, we probably got to do another refresh.
Yep.
Yeah, and then and the asynchronous version of what Jen is talking about there, you could just use Cloud App to record a talk over as you're going through the deck, or as you're going through the website, and like talking to them like, hey, Susan, you know, XYZ, and I know that, like, you know, based on the partnerships you've done recently with so and so and so and so and so and so, you know, this is what I'm thinking about here, like, right? So essentially what you're doing is an asynchronous call, if you will, but again, not like super long-winded or what have you, just like terse.
I'm
So
assuming
you know, like,
I'm assuming you've got a pretty high cost.
yeah,
Yeah.
high ASP.
You can spend time doing this.
Oh, yeah, you can spend time doing, yes, exactly. Because it's, you know, it's a high value,
Yeah.
you know, exercise, which is probably why these people are being very parsimonious with their time, right? Because it's like a high-end buyer. Wonderful. Well, hopefully that was helpful, Danielle. Thanks, and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. All
right. Cool. I think Zach has a really fun question here. Let me go ahead and find Zach. Promote. All right.
Hey.
Hey, there he is. Hey, Zach. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, share who you work for and what you do there, and then we can get into your question here, okay?
Almost. So I'm going to leave the company name out because I haven't officially accepted the offer yet, but it's a
Uh-oh.
company with 4 customers who are all customers, and they've, you know, they say what's the first step to growing is to fire your VP of sales. Well, the first sales guy they had wasn't very successful, and they're about to try to hire me to solve that problem, right? And one of the things I noticed during this process is how much the executive management has been proud, really bragging about the $0 they've spent on marketing. Like, look at these awesome customers we have, and every bit of research and like diving more into this problem is we're going to need to do a ton of marketing and matching that with the sales team. So the question is, how do we communicate up to the executive team how important marketing is, and how to explain the ROI on that?
Yeah. You said at the beginning, I think you were cutting out, that it's a fairly early stage company. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So 4 customers, all enterprise, 3-year-old company, and about 40 employees building AI software.
You said 4 customers?
Correct, just 4.
I mean, yeah, there's a reason he could do it without marketing, because it was networking and referral, and, you know, and
Yeah, right.
it was basically ABM,
Right.
what they were doing, right? So it's like a form of marketing. And, you know, I think the real thing that you have to figure out is what, you know, how many customers are you thinking of bringing on? And how are you going to support that? Because it's absolutely fine that you were able to onboard 4 customers on your own. Go Nimbly was referral based for 1.5 years. And yeah, it's awesome. Your sales cycles are short. You know, it's like, it's much easier to do, but it doesn't scale. It dries up at some point. And so I think you're going to have to start painting that picture of whatever your metrics are right now. There's no way he's going to keep the same velocity and conversion rate if you're moving to a place where, I don't know where these enterprise customers came in, but I'm guessing it was a lot of networking.
Yep.
Yeah. So Zach, I turned your camera off because I think you're having a little bit of bandwidth unevenness there. Yeah, I mean, I think my take on this is like I'm skeptical that there's actually a repeatable sales motion here.
I
Right.
I agree.
And so as a sales leader, you're previously your current role or your previous roles in sales leadership. I think that cut out as well.
So I had yes and no. Like I was a all hats operations guy at another startup that failed. So like I ran 2 deals that were also enterprise, but no. I mean, I think best case for this company is I come in, do some evangelical sales, and we hire my boss, right? Um,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So in general, so I threw a deck in the chat on this topic. So this is actually something that I like write on quite a bit, speak on quite a bit as like somebody who's a founder who also happens to have you know sales execution and management acumen. Generally speaking, the reason why, as you noted earlier, people fire their first VP of sales before they get to scale is usually because they don't have a repeatable go-to-market. And so my view on this is that it's generally speaking not the responsibility of a professional salesperson to essentially figure out the sales motion. It's actually the responsibility of the founder. And the reason why is because it's extremely difficult for any external sales, either individual contributor, jack of all trades, or sales leader to have the sort of subject matter expertise and market intimacy that that a founder would have. And this is not 100% the case, but generally speaking, if you've done your you've done your product development and early stage development correctly, the founder has done tons of customer development, is very intimate with the problem space, has fit technology to the problem, and so they are the most intimate with that. And so essentially, like trying to get somebody else to then figure out how to sell that is kind of this awkward game of telephone versus them figuring out what that initial sales motion looks like and doing founder-led selling. And so normally, like the exit criteria for that kind of stage isn't, I mean, again, it depends. It's usually not like 4 customers. It's usually more like 20 or 40 or what have you. Again, depending on your ASP. And in this case, if this is like an enterprise sale with, that's very long or what have you, it may be difficult to get to that sort of scale. But like you want to see some sort of repeatability before you bring somebody else in to kind of like take that playbook and then refine it. So kind of what you're describing right now would kind of give me pause unless you're bought in to then be like, cool, this is my job. My job is to my job is to do the product development on the go-to-market. Like I'm not taking somebody else's thing and then iterating it. Like I'm literally creating it from whole cloth. If that is if that's what you're going to be asked to do, cool. It is a high risk proposition and is a less common design pattern. It takes a very specific skill set that is really more like weaponized product manager than it is actually like sales rep. And then also you're going to need a certain level of autonomy that is in order to like drive feature requests back into the product, etc. But in general, what you're kind of describing kind of like makes the hair on the back of my neck stick up a little bit, because it sounds like oftentimes in these situations you would be the second VP of sales to get fired. So I mean, like not to be the bearer of bad news, but like it'd be very different if if the person was saying like, oh, we don't need to do any marketing, we have 25 customers and I had this acquisition channel that is repeatable, then I'd be like, okay, that sounds pretty rad. But like the scale of customers that they're at right now and like the level of repeatability is kind of giving me a little bit of pause there. So I think you would just have to have a very honest conversation about that.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's one data point we have. I wouldn't join a company with a CEO who doesn't believe in marketing. I think that we're beyond that. And there's a Dave Gerhardt. I'll add. I think I have the link here. I'll add you a link here. He goes to this topic pretty in depth. Just like his viewpoint on what kind of CEO you should have and what to do with a CEO who doesn't believe in marketing. So check it out. I think it is, kind of risky. You did ask a second part question, which is like, how do you prove the value of marketing? And there's obviously a lot of ways to do that. And I just don't think that you're at the scale for something like campaign attribution or things like that. You're going to be able to do that kind of back of the napkin type of thing. So I don't know that you're at a place where you like it's about, proving that a certain campaign worked. And it's more about nailing kind of the strategy of how you guys are going to get more customers. And if you are kind of enterprise, if you have 5 customers right now and 50 people, you guys are selling a pretty high amount of money to be able to like sustain that per customer. And so, the idea being like, is this more of an ABM play? Do you have to sell that kind of strategy? So it doesn't feel like, hey, his viewpoint might be like marketing just does brand and events, and we have to teach that it goes beyond that.
Right.
Wonderful. Thanks, Zach. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend. Okay. Wonderful. I think Imran actually had a great question that kind of came in ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and grab him here. He's somehow in here as
2
twice.
people? Yeah, I see it.
And now he's like jumping around and I'm having a hard time nailing him down. All right. I think I got it this time. You there? Hey, there you are. Wonderful.
Hi there.
Hiya.
Hey, Imran. Good to see you. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself and then we can get into your question, please?
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks again for taking my question, Jen. It's really great to have you. Imran, I live and work in upstate New York, about 4 hours from the city. We do custom software development, web application, and system integration, namely off of the Salesforce platform. So Jen, it's great to have you as part of the kind of Salesforce ecosystem and all the great stuff that you've done with Blue Wolf. Blue Wolf is like the wolf when it comes to Salesforce consulting, where we're like a very small raven when we we kind of follow people around, and we do a lot of great implementation projects for our companies. The question I wanted to ask was, as people kind of come into roles within companies, and it was great, the fact that you were kind of able to share this recently in your sales kickoff about understanding competency. And so like right when you come in, I actually just had my 3rd year anniversary. I remember 3 years ago on July 9th, when I started, I had a lot of unconscious incompetence where, there's just so much that I just did not know. There were a lot of known unknowns, and there was a lot that I just did not know. And then later on, kind of progressing forward, you become consciously incompetent, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that you kind of think
you don't know.
Exactly. And then you become consciously competent. You know what you know. And then you move up to become consciously competent. So where I'm at now, kind of 3 years in within my environment, I'm consciously competent. I'm also consciously incompetent. There's so much I don't know. I know what I don't know. I know what I know, and I know why I'm good. And I'm trying to get, better each and every day. And I know why I'm not great. And so Jen, as like a thought leader within RevOps, it seems like you portray and personify unconsciously competence. And can you kind of share a little bit about how you got there, and why is it that you wanted to include that specific slide deck in your SKO this year? Thanks again.
Totally. And what Imran is alluding, he messaged me, so I sent him a little screenshot of the hierarchy of competence, which is what he's talking about, right? And really the piece that's there is, can you trust your intuition? So depending on each one of those, you're going to be able to trust your intuition or not. So if you're unconsciously incompetent, you've got the wrong intuition. The moment that you go to the top of the pyramid where you become unconsciously competent, you have really right intuitions. You don't need to do as much analysis. You're so good at something. It's like the back of your hand. You're just doing it. You understand what's kind of going on. And the thing about that is that it is not like you're a holistic person and now you are unconsciously competent in everything that you do. Every time you learn something different, you're right back at the bottom of that pyramid. So it really is about learning It's about having a growth mindset. It's about, really understanding when you know and when you don't know. And, you have to do that through a variety of ways. So, this is a fairly, broad topic, and we get a lot into kind of psychology here, but there's a few things that I would, kind of say as all of you guys that are on, start kind of thinking, like, as a little thought exercise, what are a couple of like different projects that occurred recently from an operational standpoint at your company? And, if you're thinking of one, try to figure out, where did that come from? Like, how did you prioritize that particular project? Because there's, same with this pyramid, but I've taken it and made it about operations. So one of Go Nimbly's frameworks is, how are you prioritizing? And you're either doing it intuition based, which, it's a little different from this competence model when I was talking about intuition, but this is just like gut. The field also sort of does it from, like, their experience. Like, this is not good, this is wrong. There's, so you've got sort of that, I'm just intuition, I think we should do this. You've got your experience, which happens a lot in San Francisco, which is Pete goes from one company to another, brings his IP, goes to another one. We used to do it this way, and you prioritize based on that. And the last one being customer, which is like, I've identified a gap and I'm prioritizing that. Try to look at, like, that's where this kind of like incompetence or competence pyramid comes into play at work, is like, how are you deciding on what to work on? And is it, can you trust it? Are you really thinking about gaps that you're covering? Are you really prioritizing with metrics in mind? And that's, it's silly, like, to really dumb it down. But the way that we become great at business is we prioritize the right work. That's it. Like, you do the right work every day. And, this is one model in order to make sure that you're doing that, because you focus on the wrong thing, you can burn 3 weeks, you don't get those back. So it's just all about, great revenue operations team is prioritizing the right gaps to fill, and they're focusing on that.
Yeah, I think, so Jen's talking about almost like a curriculum, right? For yourself, right? Where it's like, the way that you learn things is oftentimes by doing them and like banging your head against things, in order to then figure them out. And so what I think what we're talking about here is like, great, prioritize the right things. Then that will make you good. Yeah. As opposed to just like, whatever gets thrown in front of me. I'll also talk about how you can put yourself in environments which will lead you to the right things to learn. So this is actually kind of where things like modern sales come in, is, making sure that you're situated in a community of practice that will make it such that, this is one of the reasons why MSP's Q&A forum is a Google group. And one of the things that happens is it's largely email based, and it, by virtue of the fact that it's a very it's a high activity forum, there can be a lot of email. One of the things that people actually really appreciate, though, is that they see questions that they would not have thought to ask themselves, and they get to be like a fly on the wall and like listen into. So like Twitter is kind of very helpful in this regard as well. You can be a fly on the wall on a conversation on a topic that you maybe didn't think that, or maybe you didn't actually have that problem right now, or maybe you didn't think you had that problem, but then your eyes are open to the fact that actually maybe you do have that problem. Or when you encounter it in 90 days or 6 months or what have you, lo and behold, you actually now you're like, oh, I've seen this before. I actually learned about it. So it's like the joke about how like you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Or another example that I like to use, I grew up skiing and ski racing. You always want to be skiing with people who are faster than you, right? You don't want to be the fastest person, because then you can just, it's boring. Well, also you're not going to get pushed, right? So I think this is where things like, being members of a community of practice can be very helpful, because now you're situating yourself and like learning from other folks and who are kind of taking you along that path. So that can be a really good way of just making sure that you're driving that lifelong learning, is like putting yourself in the right rooms, right? To quote Hamilton. Did you have something else you wanted to add, Jen?
Yeah, we are always thinking about this problem, because we, in consulting, we need our consultants to be very good at identifying like what their known knowns and what their unknown knowns are. We call it base jumping. So like, once you get a question, you have to figure out like, what do you know and what are the gaps you don't know, and go find those so that we're recommending the right solutions to our customers. And it's not just that you got the good consultant, right? Like we need to figure out how to make that part of our process. So one of the models that you might want to use if you're kind of struggling this for yourself, or as a team, there's a company called a book called An Everyone Culture that I really like, and they talk about identifying your backhand, which is like, what's the one thing that if you were good at, you would get a lot more work done or make a lot more impact, and identify one thing to work on. Because I think when we think about professional development, we sometimes go too broad, and so find that one thing. And then as a company, we've also done something where for new products we roll out or new things, we're using a coach captain right hand model. So three people are on it. There's the person coaching who's not doing the work, they're literally coaching you. There's the captain who's doing the work, running the workshop. The coach is there to catch them if they're not doing well, and the right hand is there, does a little bit of the grunt work, but also is there to learn so that they can become the captain. And so can you create spaces in your organization that are part of your process that allow people to learn, because burnout, turns out, is not from hours, it's from feeling like you're not growing.
What was the name of that book again?
Everyone Culture.
Everyone Culture.
Yeah, it's
put
really
it down in the resources here. All right, wonderful. Well, Imran, hopefully that was helpful, and have a great weekend. Take care. All right, we're gonna do our last question here. Where did Dan go? We'll see what shirt he's wearing. I bet he's wearing a Sonar shirt. I bet he is. All right, let's see what we got here. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Pete. No Sonar
no,
shirt today.
No Sonar shirt. Oh man. All right. Well, maybe next time. Can you introduce for people who don't know you? Can you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into your question here?
Sure. I'm Dan Grossberg, Rev Operations at a startup called Clyde, which is in the extended warranty and accidental coverage space for a tech company. B2B, SaaS, extremely small ACV. So,
but awesome product, obviously.
Totally, absolutely,
yeah.
For sure. So, if memory serves, the question I asked was around. So I'm an operator essentially, and I'm building out, working out this startup, building out new processes, building out new infrastructure in terms of Salesforce or CRM, and where I'm butting my head against the wall is in making decisions and actually implementing, and whether I'm faced with death by committee or operating in a bubble in a vacuum by myself. So I'm trying to understand where to find the right balance, and whether there are different strategies I could employ, such as like assigning roles for different projects, or just some guidance there.
Yeah. So the baseline one on roles, you can use a RACI framework: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So
I just wrote that down.
Yeah, RACI. Yeah. So you can get down to the core of that's a big PM framework, and really letting people know that are in your committee or in that what their role is. So if you're an informed, your job, Dan, is to do outbound communication and let them know, hey guys, this is what's going on. These are the decisions that are made, and they don't get, anything more. Consulted, they're not making the decisions, but they're the people that you're going to be like, hey, I'd like to sit down with you and ask you some questions. And they don't make decisions, but they give you a lot of insight. And if you're stuck, you might go to them. Responsible is actually doing the work, and accountable is the person accountable for the success of the project. So if you can figure that out and make it really, we have that problem. I love to get my hands in everything. So people have to tell me Jen, this is not your role today. You're being consulted. And so it is a little bit of managing. The real problem that you're going to have with this idea of death by committee or operating in a vacuum is death by committee slows things down. That operating in a vacuum, you make mistakes. And so we want to be, somewhere in the middle of that. I know I already told you guys about action meetings, but I find that sort of framework, again, these big momentum based meetings, to be a good way to do it, which is, Dan, if you're doing a project and you got 10 open items, you are capping each one at 3-minute discussion. And you're still accountable for making the decision, and you can cut it off and kind of move on, and figuring out these frameworks to make fast decisions, to not sit and kind of mull it over. And then we have a thing at Go Nimbly, which is no devil's advocate. And it's not your job to punch holes unless you've got a solution or you're willing to take it on and do it yourself. Because if you sit around and go like, I'm not sure that's gonna work. Okay, uh, why
What's your
not?
solution?
And so creating that culture of not doing that. And then my
Well,
last point. Oh, sorry. Do you have something, Pete?
yeah, no, just on that
That was
last
Dan.
point about no devil's advocate. Like I literally suggested that we do that, so I
Then
got
you
to
got
walk
devil's
back on my
advocate.
words there. Yeah.
What was the last thing you had there,
Yeah.
Jen?
Sorry. Yeah, we're running out of time. The only other thing is doing some workshops to kind of gather requirements right at the top really helps get people aligned on the vision. So like, don't go into a rabbit hole, have your solution, and then loop people in. We do what we call silo breaking workshops and things like that. But go book a 90-minute. Use a tool like Mural where you have kind of a visual or some other online blackboard and like start really understanding like, hey guys, what's going on? Let me get all my inputs. Sometimes it's about like a lot of insight right at the beginning and then great, it's on me now. And that tends to help if you align at the beginning as opposed to bring a solution in the middle. That tends to put people off.
Yeah. So as you can hear, Jen has done a little bit of project management before in her life. I'm going to kind of take the other side of this, which is how to be effective in being able to run fast and help people who maybe don't think about the consequences of over much coordination or what have you. Because like I happen to know, because Clyde's a Atrium customer and I've known Dan for a while, I happen to know that you guys are fairly small, right? And so oftentimes when people are coming to an organization or coming to early stage startups from a larger organization, which I don't know the background of the other people, other stakeholders involved, oftentimes they have like certain expectations associated with like an execution cadence, and so kind of have like psychological limitations associated with like how fast you can move if somebody
like
is
yeah,
or just they just don't even know. They said, oh, I thought we should have a meeting. It's like, oh no, I actually just already created it. It's done. It's already done. So I think the important thing there is just like to make, and this may not be applicable, but like just make sure that people are inspecting their priors with respect to how quickly that you can move. The other thing too, I would ask there is when people, maybe it's kind of related to this no devil's advocate situation, is are they being mindful of the overhead associated with those incremental conversations and iterations? It's just like, look, it's not free to continue like going in a circle, right? We have opportunity costs. Like I'm sure Dan has a list of like shit he'd like to get done, because I know that Dan likes to get shit done. And so the more time we spend talking about this thing versus like going, these are the opportunity costs associated with that. Now, the other thing I think that can be helpful there is recognizing when a project is actually a one-way door, or like a thing is a one-way door versus like we can unwind this, which is kind of related. Like, because you want to spend a lot of time on things. Yeah, it's like low probability, high consequence. Like if people are poker players, like expected value, et cetera, et cetera. Like if you have a situation where it's like, all right, if we do this and it's wrong, we're like super effed and we can never like back it out again. Yeah, maybe spend some more time like digging into that. If it's one of those things where it's like, look, and this is kind of like agile software development, or having like, look, if we push it and it turns out that it wasn't right, we can pull it back. If we can identify that and say like, well, maybe actually we can just like change the order here. We could push it, do the thing, and then promise ourselves like we'll have a checkpoint in 2 weeks where we say, hey, was that actually wrong? And now we can unwind it, versus like spending so much time up front that isn't necessarily going to pay back, because if it turns out to be wrong, we can just unwind it, and then we can have the discussion. If it turned out to be right, hey, guess what? In the meantime, I was doing other stuff, right? So I think that those are kind of some things that could be helpful in terms of just like making it such that you can run faster without people getting in your way.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right. Delightful. Good to see you, Dan. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, Jen, we're done.
We did it.
Did you survive?
I did. I'm gonna have a
You
drink
did.
now, I think.
You
It's
killed
4:30
it. Well,
for me.
I was gonna. She's like, I'm in Hawaii. It's 10 a.m. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. You killed it.
Thank you.
Well done, everybody. This has been being recorded. We're going to throw it on YouTube. We'll send it out after the fact to everybody else. You can subscribe on YouTube to these if you'd like. go ahead and share it with your, with your teams and your colleagues. Thank you to Jen and Go Nimbly for affording us access to her time, which is, quite literally money in the case of
Yeah, I charge for it usually.
in the case of a consulting organization. For folks who are not members of Modern Sales, just check it out. If you want to situate yourself in a community of practice, it will help you with your peer education and getting to unconscious mastery or whatever it was.
Ooh.
You should definitely be a member of Modern Sales. But otherwise, we'll see you all next week.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Jen. See ya.
Thank you. See ya.